في مقابلة مع العربية توقع ستين جاكوبسن وهو الرئيس التنفيذي للاستثمار في ساكسو بانك توقع تضخما دائما طويل الأجل في الولايات المتحدة ووصول أسعار الذهب إلى مستويات مرتفعة قد تصل إلى $3000 للأونصة هذا العام. لنستمع إلى توقعات البنك للعام 2023.
The central bank will be running at 2x what they've done over the last 10 years. So for Western Europe, it's about 4 to 5%. For US, it's about 5%. So, and the reason is that we have not dealt with the real issue, which is the lack of energy. That is still an existent issue also as we come into next year. On top of that, simply we have full employment, very low interest rate in real rates terms, and we have the fact that financial conditions, the measurement by which central banks operate, is as easy now as it was when they started hiking interest rate early this year. In other words, recession is not on the board, and we clearly see that inflation will continue to be a very, very strong story in 23.
إذن أين ترون مستويات التضخم في العام المقبل؟ وعندما تقولون أن بعض البنوك المركزية ليست جدية في خفض التضخم، عن أي بنوك مركزية تحديدا نتحدث؟
So the least serious one is, of course, the the Bank of England, who has failed to do anything significantly. Similar, we see the Reserve Bank in Australia, but into that mix now we can also throw the Federal Reserve of the US, because clearly they are now concerned about something on the horizon that is not yet there. And with the Federal Reserve, who constantly gets things wrong when they're trying to predict the future, my money is going to be on the opposite of what Fed thinks. Fed thinks we're going to have a slowdown in inflation. I think we'll have a permanent longer-term inflation as long as we don't deal with the issue, which is energy deficiency and a labor market that is extremely tight.
في تقرير ساكسو بانك أيضا تشيرون إلى أن أسعار الذهب ستشهد ارتفاعات قوية جدا خلال العام المقبل، والتوقعات التي يشير إليها التقرير هي لوصوله إلى $3000 للأونصة. هذا يعني مرتفع جدا بالمقارنة مع أسعار الذهب الحالية. فما هو التفسير وراء هذه التوقعات؟
So we'll see a very slow train moving towards diluting the amount of dollar reserves, replacing that most naturally with dollar. We see in the international commodity trade that someone like Russia right now is indicating that in the future they will prefer to get paid in gold. So in other words, we think that gold is going to get a renaissance in terms of transaction and store of value going forward. In particular, if we are right about inflation, which is going to be the nervous part of this equation, we think that the gold price will maybe not hit 3,000, but the direction of travel is certainly to a high level.
إذن أين ترى الدولار العام المقبل؟ هل نتوقع تراجعات للدولار؟
In terms of the dollar outlook, it's really simple because the US runs a current account deficit and they don't have enough savings to pay for it. So they are dependent on foreign capital to come into the country. Two drivers of that capital flow is either a very high interest rate or weak dollar. Right now we have a very strong dollar and a very high interest rate. We are very close to the ceiling in terms of interest rate. So for me, as we reach that level during 23, I think 23 will be the peak in the dollar, and from then onwards we will start to see an acceleration of what I call the slow train, which is all of these dilution of reserves.
تتوقعون جوز الدولاريان عند 200 العام المقبل، علما أنه البنك المركزي الياباني من البنوك المركزية القليلة حول العالم الذي لم يبدأ بعد بتشديد السياسة النقدية. فاليوم كيف ترون أو ما هي التوقعات للاقتصاد الياباني في العام المقبل؟
So Japan has for over 20 years tried to deal with too low inflation and too little growth. So it's like an experiment. You keep repeating, expecting different results. You're not getting different. What we're saying is they have a very strong robotic sector. They have a very strong telecommunications sector, but they have a very weak domestic market. What do they need? Well, they need a reset of all the debt. We all know that they have huge amount of public debt and huge amount of private savings. We're talking about a monetization based on a fixing of the currency at a fixed rate of 200. It will create a short-term turmoil, but it will leave Japan with lower debt to GDP, and it will leave them with a competitive currency at 200 fixed temporarily. But remember, in politics, temporary means permanent. And to that extent, it's just the opposite of what they do now, where they fix the interest rate, thinking that's going to heal the economy. We need the interest rate to be the equalizer on the economy. If the interest rate is high, the threshold for investment is high, and vice versa. We cannot clearly in the case of Japan, we need the interest rate to move, and that's one way to do it.
نحن نشارف على نهاية 2022 ونتطلع للعام الجديد. أين يجب أن نستثمر؟ كيف يمكن تقسيم المحفظة الاستثمارية للعام المقبل؟
I would certainly, as we talked about, keep about 20% in gold. I would put about 30% in commodities and energy. And then on the stock side, I will be investing into everything that sits in the tangible economy, the real economy. Because as you and I talked today, 90% of all value is IP, it's international, it's intellectual property, it's things that is in the thin air. What the world needs is productivity. Productivity can only create in the real economy. The real economy is too small on the energy side, on the logistics side, on the defense spending side. All of that is going to benefit. So I'm going to do a mixed basket of all these sectors. So being long in equity plays that are defense, commodity, energy, logistics, cybersecurity, and biotech. That will be my 50% allocation in the equity space.